And a very good evening to you all. Welcome to Tuesday Night Live on Crowcast. We're brought to you on Tuesday nights by bigfooty.com, obviously. The place to be if you want to talk about footy, AFL and Adelaide in particular on the Adelaide board. No Peter J tonight, well at least not to start with. He might join us a little bit later. But I do have with me Nikki New and Donos. How you going, guys? Try again. How you going, guys? I muted you.
I'm nearly... well done. I've nearly finished my ice cream.
Excellent
I'm
news.
I'm good, Phoenix. It's good to be back. It's been a few weeks, so...
Yeah, very good to have you back, Dan.
We missed you.
We've missed your voice of reason, mate.
Yes, I'm sure you have.
Turned into a bit of a rabble lately, and we just need someone to straighten us up a bit.
I know, I keep talking too much.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that whatsoever. So tonight we're a little bit light on. The interviews that we've got coming through haven't come to fruition for this evening's cast, and we have no other special guests of any mention. So for those of you who are listening in, please join us on chat. And, if you're feeling really brave, give us a buzz on Skype. I've got Skype open at the moment. We'll take a couple of calls, have a bit of a chat. But in the interim, we'll start off with Nikki's news. Where you go, Nikki?
Well, for me, the biggest thing that came out of the weekend was, besides the umpiring that we're not going to speak about, are we, Phoenix? We're not speaking about that at all.
No.
Except for the fact that on poll on the AFL website, 62% saying that it should be a free. Whoops, AFL. I think the
Nikki.
Alex Rance thing. What?
We're not covering anything we covered on Sunday night, remember?
Yeah, I know. Well, Danos is here. He can cover it. Because we haven't heard his opinion. I think it might be very similar. Yes, it was a lapse in judgment. It was stupid, particularly in light of the fact that there had been the King hit on that young footballer, I think Cronin, I think their surname was, and he passed away. And they had his cousin leading Richmond out for that game.
Nikki, it's not a King hit. It's a coward punch.
Coward punch, sorry. Yes, correct. It's a coward punch. And then for Rance to go and do that. And for me, actually, what was then compounded even worse was the Channel 7 commentators trying to excuse it and say that, he shouldn't really be reported. He shouldn't get a week. He was just frustrated. Sorry, too bad. He looked at the back of Watts' head and he watched the entire time as he brought his forearm and his elbow down on a player who was unprotected. It was just disgusting. The fact that he's only ended up with 2 weeks, I presume whether he's accepted that or not, is that was just shocking. And then Cunnington, did either of you guys see Cunnington drop his knees into Ablett quite deliberately?
Yeah.
I also heard Brent Harvey defending him on SEN this afternoon.
Yeah, whatever.
Apparently he got his foot caught underneath Gary Ablett and couldn't do anything about falling into him.
I think Brent, at his advanced age, might need to go to an optometrist.
Perhaps.
I mean, he's only 4'3", though, so maybe he had a different angle.
Very interesting. If you actually watch the vision, Cunnington has a clenched fist. He brings it back, and because Ablett goes down, he drops the fist and then goes in with the knees instead. He was going to hit Ablett any which way he could prior to that. That was so intentional. I couldn't believe how dirty North Melbourne were that game. That surprised me.
So what you're saying is that it's a good thing that Ablett has learnt so well to duck.
Yeah. Oh dear.
What it boils down to.
And then I do like this. Matthew Wallace has just put it in there. Free kick to Hawthorn. Everybody needs to be using that hashtag on Twitter. Everything's a free kick to Hawthorn. It was quite funny how that sort of compounded over the weekend with a lot of neutral supporters. And do we want to kind of start having a little run through the ladder or not Phoenix?
We'll do that a little bit later on.
Yeah.
The comment that I'd make about Rance is that I thought it was exceedingly self-indulgent of him to come out and actually hold a press conference today, lamenting how bad he felt, how it was the lowest point of his career, etc., etc., etc. It's not about you, Alex. It's about Jack Watts. You know,
he played well.
You know, the fact that Rance was, narcissistic enough to want to come out and he was more concerned about his name and reputation says a lot about the individual and his character. So, that's about all.
And as somebody pointed out, Richmond have form with whacking players in the back of the head.
Well, Tyrone Vickery, even Marriage.
Vickery was the front of the head, not the back of the head. But it was still a whack in the head.
He came from the back.
Came from behind, yeah, he just has long arms.
Yeah. And a dad who's taught him how to box. What else is the other big thing? There was something, and it's gone now. So obviously it's,
The enemy? So what you would...
Oh, yes. Now, they're a shambles. I've got no idea quite what's going on in there, but it's not just wrong at the AFL level, it's wrong at their reserves level. There seems to be a complete disconnect between the coaching staff and the players.
Well, and
possibly between the
front office,
the players
as well.
themselves. Yeah, and then the front office who are all about kicking goals off field, but it's very much, and Port supporters are going to hate me for saying this, in contrast to our admin, who the focus is primarily on getting our footy department resourced, functioning well, and then they go after the extra on the outside. It's always the footy department comes first. Unfortunately, it seems that their focus for Port has been on the outside and thinking that the inside's got to look after themselves.
Well, and probably rightly so to a point.
Yeah, because they did need to fix it. They were in trouble.
And a couple of years ago, their inner workings were quite good and took them to within a kick of the grand final. And it was their outer workings that needed a whole lot of stuff to happen for them.
Now,
and I think they obviously, to me, it seems like they took the foot off the pedal on the inner and pressed down on the outer, thinking that it would just keep going the way it was going because they had the best fitness trainer and they had the best coach, and that's all gone to shit now.
But if you actually looked at that year, no, they didn't. They did at the start until halfway through the season when everybody else figured out this is exactly what they're doing, and the fitness came back to the same level pretty much as everybody else, or most of the top sides. And they did not play well in the second half of the year. Yes, they got a kick away from a grand final, but I think 2014 was the aberration. They were crap beforehand, and they've been crap afterwards. And everybody keeps overrating Port, saying, oh, they've got such great depth, they've got all of this, they're so fit. As you just said then, Danos, no, I think 2014 was very much an aberration, and it was only for the start of the year, and it's been glossed over the cracks of what was actually really there, and I think was revealed in 2014 in that second half of the year.
The Ken Hinkley spike.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's that parallel between him and Sando is really scary. Yep. And you actually look at those coaches who have come from under Bomber, he's the only one I think really left, isn't he, as a head coach in the AFL? The others have all failed.
Who was the other one? McCartney? McCartney was under him, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, McCartney. Neild was initially and then went to Collingwood.
Sando.
Yep, Sando.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So, yeah, everybody was after. Geelong was so dominant. Bomber must be doing right. Let's steal the assistants, because they've been through that system, they know how good it is. Yeah, don't think so. That's been shown.
I think clubs wanted Geelong's IP, and they probably valued that more highly than individual coaching skill.
And I think the death of Hinkley's coaching career, in a way, was when Richardson left and went to St Kilda, and when Walsh left as well.
Yep.
Because they knew the numbers. They knew exactly what Port were running. They knew exactly how they were. And you think they didn't tell or other people who've actually been headhunted from out of Port, that IP does get out. So they don't have this spike. And interestingly, I did hear that a Geelong fitness person during 2014 was asked about Burgess and the way he was playing them and everything else, and he just said he's running them too hard. They're not soccer players. And you look at their injuries that they're getting. And I think a lot of the impact injuries possibly could have been caused by that overtraining.
Well, it's interesting that Burgess was lauded in the competition as a guru, and now that they're not running out games and they've succumbed to a few soft tissues, there's not really much talk about Burgess. Well, there's none. There's no mention of Burgess at all in the conversation. And yet, the guy probably needs to take on board some of the fitness failures that they're experiencing at the moment. If he's going to take the good, he's got to take the bad as well, I would have thought.
Unfortunately, without a pre-season to do the work in, there's a couple of teams at the moment who just appear to have not done the right pre-season. And there's other teams that look like they've done it spot on.
I agree with that. But clearly Fremantle haven't done the right pre-season.
No, that's right.
Well, it doesn't help because a few of theirs, I think the majority of their injuries are kind of like impact or, twisting. They're just things that you can't stop. So Fremantle have been cursed. Now, Ben Tree, he said, remember what Jason Ackermann said at the start of the season? What was that, Ben? Must have been something about Burgess or Port.
I'm trying to remember the comments that Acker made, but it was along the lines of what we're talking about at the moment.
Well, conversely, remember when our new fitness head was appointed? There was a lot of talk about jobs for the boys, and he's been at Brisbane and they were crap. How are we going?
Yeah, my only comment to that, and I reckon I've said this before, but my judgment on fitness dudes is always in the second year. Because in the first year they're riding on the back of last year's fitness base. So, I guess that's been borne out in Burgess's current predicament. And I think we'll need to wait till next year before we can judge Bird in the same capacity. Without spending too much time on Port, I'd also like to touch on the headline in today's paper, Nikki.
And that was because I don't get the crapatizer. I refuse to give them money.
Well, neither do I, but apparently the rumour of alleged indiscretions between the Boak and Hartlett households was covered.
It really is a tabloid.
And whilst we don't want to get into specifics, I don't want to get sued, but
yeah,
I think for that sort of a story to come out, irrespective of the truth or otherwise of that story, I think for that to come out, it does highlight that the media are aware of a lot of unrest within the playing group down at Alberton, and it doesn't bode well for that club. They've got some massive list management problems. They've got obvious player discontent.
And they've got a lot of long-term contracts for a lot of these players as well.
Exactly.
So if they try to offload them, that's going to be really difficult.
Expensive for them.
Yeah, it's going to be a long road back for that club.
And then you combine that with Kosh taking things public on Twitter and doing things media-wise when you've got a situation like this, it needs to be dealt more in-house initially before you take it outside. Outside to the media is a last resort because there's no other way around it, is the only way I can see that.
It was interesting listening to Ruin Ditz this morning, and Rashida in particular was quite in favour of Kosh's approach and felt that it showed strong leadership, etc., etc. To me, it surprised me actually, because Roo has been largely silent in his own capacity as, kingmaker, game changer down at Adelaide. And for him to support such a public lambasting of the club by Kosh, I wonder whether Roo's just throwing a bit of petrol on the fire or something. I don't know, but I certainly think actions speak louder than words, and Koshy should have done that behind closed doors. And you don't beat your chest; you just go about and fix things.
Now, Ben has just sent us a link to, I assume, Ackermanis's comments.
Yeah, it's to 5AA, and he said that Port would be bottom 4.
There you go. He's a crazy but intelligent man, Mr. Ackermanis.
Well, I got to say, I had Port in my top 8 at the start of the year, so I was wrong.
Yeah, I had him missing. Yeah, Matt reckons Roo was trolling Port. I tend to agree, actually. It doesn't seem Roo's style to support grandstanding like David Kosh did. Anyway, we probably should move on from Port and talk about some of the other teams. It's probably a good opportunity after 5 rounds to talk about where teams are at this early stage of the season. We've got a game coming up. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, do we want to start at the top of the ladder or the bottom? Because the one that's at the very bottom is coming opponents.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. We've got a game coming up against Fremantle, who are probably the most surprising team out of all this year. And Lions been pretty upfront and honest, almost blasé to a point, about their predicament. What are your thoughts, Nick?
Well, when you've got 8 of your best 22 missing, and somebody actually put a list up on the board saying, well, here's the equal of we would be without Jacobs, Walker, Jenkins, Sloane. I think they put in like Douglas. And you keep going on. That's a fair whack out of your best 22. You can have some good depth in an AFL side, but you're not going to have that much in terms of quality to come back in. I think why Ross has been so blasé is he has that 5-year deal and he knows he has to change his game plan. He brought in 2 new assistants to actually help assist him. So, of course, from Hawthorn. So working on their IP, again, as we were just discussing before. But, yeah, sometimes how they just haven't given a whimper has been amazing, but you can kind of understand it with those injuries they've been getting, and now to lose Fife as well, and that could actually be quite a difficult comeback for him because that's the same leg. He's broken it above the plate. I think that's going to be a difficult injury to come back from, and if anybody can do it, it would be him. But I think this weekend could almost end up like it was that game back in 2009.
So when you say you just put out a couple of names, you said Jacobs, Walker, Sloane, Douglas, and someone else.
Jenkins.
So who are you referring to?
Well, if
being injured?
So if we lost
Fremantle,
if we lost them, those kind of players. Well, they've got Sandlin's out, they've Bundy out, they've now got Fife out, Johnson out, so that would be possibly Talia.
Valentine.
Who are this? Yeah, Ballantyne. So Eddie.
Yep.
That's going to change our team very, very much.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So I think everybody's going, oh, Fremantle is shit. Look at it in the context there. There's 8 players, and think about your own side. Take equivalent players out and go, well, okay, how are you going to cope with a season that's fairly as even as it is so far this year?
Well, all we can do on Saturday afternoon is play the team that they bring to oppose us. And
precisely
what it looks like at the moment is that they're very much under strength and they really shouldn't put up much of a fight.
And I honestly think that Lyon got some buy-in from the board at the end of last season saying, look, we're going to have to restructure, we're going to have to bring in some new blood. I mean, they've played the same team basically for the last 3 or 4 years. There's not been a lot of personnel change, and it's the same thing as Ross did at St Kilda. He backed the players in. He's very loyal to his player base, much like Neil Craig, actually, in that regard. And eventually the team just runs out of steam. I mean, Pav's a shadow of his former self this season.
He's 34 years old or something.
Exactly. It's a bit of a shame that he ran around again, you know, and I know he's probably chasing a flag, but now he's got to go through the whole bloody season, you know, with nothing at the end of it, really. But I reckon they're going to go through a bit of a rebuild. I don't think they're going to try too hard to win games this year, Nick, to be honest. I think they'll be happy with a top 5 pick.
You also have to think that guys like Pavlich and Johnson only really stayed on because they've got so close over the last couple of years, and they didn't get the McCarthy deal across the line. And you'd have to think that that'll be their number one priority in this year's trade period. If they end up with like a first or second pick in the draft based on the ladder at the moment, there's no way they're going to be able to trade that for. No way they will trade that for McCarthy. He's not worth a first or second pick. So they're going to have to lose some players to be able to get currency to trade for him.
Yeah. Lockie Neal is the increasing whisper.
And Chris Mayne.
Chris Mayne, I hadn't heard that one.
There was an article about him on the AFL website 3-4 days ago, 5-6 days ago.
Okay. Yeah. Is he a Victorian player?
He's a Victorian, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And it's very, very interesting that Barrett has been quite strong, that the Crows are very into Neil. And as much as people hang Barrett out and think he's a ambulance chaser, etc., he does have good contacts. And generally what he says, unlike certain other journalists, tends to come pretty close to occurring.
Yeah, he's a knob, but he gets it right probably about 60% of the time.
I think a lot of our feelings are moulded by some of the stuff that was happening last year, and that all turned out to be true. So
yeah. So if we, sorry, go on.
So if we move on to the next one up on the ladder.
Oh, just before that, Vardy Magic. Yes, I completely agree. This is the type of game that in the past we have dropped. Now he's just said, beware the wounded dockers, nothing to lose. We're a chance of getting ahead of ourselves. Absolutely, I think you're spot on the money. We can't take this for granted.
No, and I don't think we will.
Well, a certain amount of redemption from last week needs to be gained by our group. Whichever way you look at it, we let a game slip that we should have won. So if the team doesn't come out hungry for a smacking after that one, then we've got some attitude problems, I think.
I think we've got a ring in, Phoenix.
Ooh.
Who have we got? How do you know?
Have a look on the program.
Hello, Peter.
Evening, folks. How are we going?
Yay! Peter, how are we?
Good, mate. I'm sorry to join the cast late, but as I said, just drove in the vehicle from the big Melbourne Anzac trip. So I'm just busy trying to unload and get kids organised and all that good stuff.
Very good.
Well, actually, it's perfect timing because we were just about to talk about Essendon, and you actually saw them on Monday.
I did. It was a magnificent day. I'm really glad that I went, and the result had no great bearing on the day itself. For a neutral, it was a very enjoyable day, and it was a beautiful weather, and the atmosphere was just absolutely fantastic. It really was. It was great music, and the pre-game and the service was terrific, and even though the game was disappointing in the end, although interestingly enough Essendon outscored Collingwood in the second half, I think it was just a case really of Essendon coming out and probably being a bit overawed, and the Collingwood Stars side bottom and Pendlebury really stood up in what is a huge occasion. I think that in the end that was probably the difference between the sides in the first half. But from the point of view of actually going and experiencing an Anzac Day game, it was it didn't lose anything. I mean, not that I've been to any others, but it certainly didn't seem to me to lose anything. It felt like a grand final. 85,000 people and a magnificent day, and most importantly, Carlton draft only $7.50 a cup.
You listening, Adelaide Oval, the SMA?
Wait, is that cheap compared to Adelaide?
Oh yes.
Oh my lord! I've become complacent here in Canberra. I can get a $4.50 Carlton draft.
You need to pay $5 something, I think, for a water.
Oh.
Isn't a cup of beer $9 at Adelaide Oval?
Something ridiculous like that.
Yeah. Pete, at the moment we're just going through a few of the notables after 5 rounds, a few of the notable teams, and we've covered Fremantle and we've covered Essendon just then, and rather than go through, and Port obviously. Nick, the other couple that I wanted to talk about, North Melbourne Kangaroos, I think have probably surprised people. Where do you see them at? Do you think their position on the ladder is inflated, or do you think that they're a genuine chance this year?
I think they're a possible chance, and I think it is slightly inflated. They played us. Okay, that was a tough game, but their other ones, not so much. I mean, they went up to Gold Coast and they won up there, which is actually quite good for them because that's their first win, actually, I think, up at Metricon. But they were lucky because there was basically no defence for Gold Coast. So I think they've been a little bit lucky, but they have played well, to be fair. But I think they're probably more around the 3-4 position is, I think, where they might end up. Maybe 5. It's really going to be even up the top there, and it's whoever takes their chances, and so far they have taken their chances.
I don't know about you, Danos, but the thing I see about North Melbourne is that there hasn't been any really significant personnel changes in that team, and they're quite a mature team. I mean, you've got Daniel Wells back after a season out, basically, which certainly helps them out. But do you see it that way, that they're just kind of draw assisted at the moment, and really there doesn't seem to be any significant impetus for their improvement?
Their best wins against the higher placed sides this year have been against us and Gold Coast. The other ones haven't been against current top 8 sides. This week against Bulldogs is really going to show us what they're made of. However, as we know, what has happened with us in the past is winning a few games early on can really improve your confidence. And I really suspect that's what's happened to Fremantle in the opposite direction. In terms of their personnel, a lot of their personnel changes were last year. That when they brought in Waite, and against all expectations, has been fantastic for them.
Yeah.
Clearly, he is a bit of a downhill skier, and seems to be doing better and a better side rather than at the Scrabble, the rabble.
He does look fit. He does look fitter Jared Way. He looks fitter
He
and
does.
more sound. You know what I mean? He doesn't look so fragile.
Yeah, almost frail, like he was going to fall apart at Carlton. And Sean Higgins is the same. He was going to fall apart at the Bulldogs.
Yep.
And it just, those guys are two of their most important players, and Nick Del Santo, of course, as well.
Yep.
On that, Danos, I actually wondered at the time with Higgins, with all those injuries he had, and they said, oh, North picked him up, he's so injury prone. Is that actually possibly an indictment on the Bulldogs fitness staff? Because you look at the number of injuries they keep getting there as well. And they've been consistently getting injuries, and often they are the hamstrings and those soft tissue injuries. Nobody's actually really raised that there seems to be this pattern with the Bulldogs.
Well, it's a definite possibility. I don't know who their fitness staff are. I couldn't tell you whether our fitness staff are any different to any other club's fitness staff, to be perfectly honest. But they do seem to have a pattern. You're right.
And
sorry, have we talked about Melbourne at all tonight? I just asked that because I saw them on Sunday night at the G as part of my trip. I saw the Melbourne-Richmond game, and I was very, very impressed with them. They very, very good side at the moment, Melbourne.
We talked about Rance.
Yeah, it was I didn't actually see that hit, but I was really, really impressed with Jay Viney. He was absolutely fantastic, as was Hogan up and down the ground and Gawn, and got a lot of really good players playing good football at the moment, and they're just playing a good attacking brand of football, not dissimilar to what we play, and executing pretty well. And Richmond came at them pretty hard. I have to say, there was a couple of times when Richmond came at them hard, and I thought that they might cave, but they're pretty resilient. And there's one thing I did notice is a fair bandwagon starting to take hold over in the members, in the MCC members, let me tell you.
I wouldn't be surprised if those Melbourne supporters are not bandwagoning, but are just coming back because they've never really experienced, or they haven't experienced success for 15, 16 years.
A fair few Land Rovers in the car park at the moment, Pete, are there?
Plenty of those, and plenty of chinos and RMs getting around the MCG. But no, it was a good game of football, and Richmond were very, very disappointing. Of course, they seemed to they gave a couple of yelps, but just could not sustain what they were trying to do for any great period of time. And it was a good night of the football, but Melbourne too good. And interestingly enough, one of the things, we talk about all of the sophisticated pre-game entertainment of Port and the like, and all the publicity surrounding that. Interesting that the Melbourne team at the breaks would have Russell Robertson going out there with a couple of others, getting people in the crowd and taking hangers on bags, and they called themselves Hogan's Heroes, and they had the old Hogan's Heroes theme music playing over the drums.
Oh, bloody hell.
As they were, it was just so corny. So corny and so cheesy, but it was just hilarious. And the crowd loved it. The crowd sort of clapping along to the old Hogan's Heroes music. It was really good stuff.
But in a way, no wonder Hogan's not playing so well. There's all that pressure on him.
I love that old, it's unsophisticated, corny, cheesy stuff, but it was good fun.
Ben raises a good point on the chat regarding Melbourne, whether the attacking style that they're now playing is a consequence of Goody maybe taking over the reins a little bit more firmly down there.
I think it is. I think we saw that in pre-season where Goody was pretty much in charge, and they were playing a lot more attacking then. Then it started the proper season, and they kind of went back to the Roos way, and they didn't do so well, and then they seem to have changed it up again these past couple of weeks, and it's very much worked out for them. I think there is a lot more of the Goodwin influence happening.
Well, we also know from past history of what Roos has done with his sides, and they've always been dour, so there has to be some sort of influence from somewhere else, and the most obvious place is Goodwin.
And it would make sense.
And this is the last year.
Yeah, that's right. It would make sense too. If they're going to transition to Goody, they've got to transition to his game plan. And it seems that that's what they're doing, and good luck to it. It's good to see Melbourne bounce back after all these years. I don't mind it as long as when we play them at the G, they fall in a hole and don't continue to be one of those teams that we should be and never do.
Yeah, they'll be very hard to beat this year, but especially over there. They'll be hard to beat.
Yeah. The other one I wanted to talk about briefly is Geelong. We all kind of scoffed a little bit at their, decisions pre-season regarding their recruiting, but it does seem to have held them in good stead, even though, aside from Danger, they didn't pick up what I would call A-class quality. They seem to be travelling all right. They're relying on too few at the moment.
I think they're terribly overrated. I really do. Sorry, Daniel. I still think they're very overrated. I think they got Hawthorn in game one when Hawks weren't probably quite ready. But since then, all they've done is beaten Essendon, Brisbane, Port, and they got beaten by GWS. And I think that we talked, I think earlier in the season about how easy a draw they've got, and I think in the end that will probably get them over the line. I think they've got somebody at the moment. They've got Gold Coast at home next week. I mean, they've got a ridiculous draw, and I think that once they start playing some quality sides, I honestly believe they'll get found out. I really do. I think that they're terribly overrated.
I'm agreeing with Peter.
Well, I hope that that's the case because I couldn't think of anything better than to see them crash out early on. But I think my jury is still out on whether they are a good side or not.
They don't seem to be a good side on paper, but they seem to be able to put it together. Danger's got to be a lock for the Brownlow at this stage, surely. I don't think there's maybe one game that he wouldn't hold maximum.
GWS.
Nah.
Yeah, I think he's almost got it locked up with all the publicity surrounding him in Victoria. That the umpires have proven that they're meatheads, so they're not going to be able to ignore that. Plus,
that's the key, Phoenix. He's a VFL player now. That's the key.
Exactly, and he has been putting up good numbers. He has been prominent in their wins. And good luck to him. I guess that's fine. But I'm like you, Danos. I'd love to see them fall in on the back of a good draw and then just get found out, week one of the finals and get humiliated.
Hopefully it's us that does it to them.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I've got a query. Can somebody please explain to me why the Port supporters were so offended by Dangerfield that they had to boo him? Wouldn't you think they would be cheering him because he's not with the Crows anymore?
Yeah, I found that humorous too.
It was like he was their ex-girlfriend that they just, he jilted them.
Maybe there were some Crow supporters there that bolstered Port's attendance figure.
They just went along to practice the booing.
Yeah.
For the upcoming Friday night.
Who knows?
I wouldn't put that past some of our supporters.
Well, Hank was there.
And finally, I just wanted to touch on the Hawks. Obviously, they're the reigning champions, and we might talk about them briefly, and then, Pete, we might have a chat with you about your impressions at the ground. Nikki and I, I certainly threw my toys out of the pram on Sunday night, but it would be good to get your perspective. But before we get to that, the Hawks, your general impressions of Hawks, they're just going at the moment, but they still seem to be a cut above when the going gets tough.
They've been pushed. They're not playing well, and I think it's that experience that's getting them over the line.
They know how to win.
Yeah, but I haven't been that impressed with them, with the wins that they're doing. The Eagles, they beat up on them. The Cats, they lost to. The Bulldogs, that was a good game, but as people said, free kick to Hawthorn. The Saints game, they were pushed hard by the Saints, and I think it was similar to our game. It was the inexperience of the Saints players that probably helped out there. So, and if you look how close those last two ones are, and I actually rate the Saints. I think the Saints won't play finals this year, but I think they will definitely be pushing towards that next year. They will jag some wins this year against quality sides that will surprise some people. But I think they're building. They're ones I think that they're going to come up. So, yeah, I'm a little... Their experience is very good and their systems are very good. We know that. But I think they're vulnerable, a little bit vulnerable, whereas in previous years we've just kind of looked at them and gone, yeah, they're the benchmark, but I don't think we can quite make it.
And to be honest, I think that's probably why North Melbourne is top at the moment and why people aren't talking them down more than they are, because there's no really standout fantastic sides.
No, it's very even. Very even. I still, and I know we weren't going to cover anything that we talked about on Sunday night, Nick, but I'll make one exception, only because I love those little heat mats. But I went through and had a look at those in a little bit more detail and compared them to some of the other teams and previous rounds and all the rest of it. Hawthorn, for all Clarkson coming out and saying, the Crows play a unique brand, Hawthorn are one of the few teams, if any other team, whose possession is concentrated around the middle of the ground. They're still the only team that reset on transition. It's quite evident when you have a look at the plot of their ball movement against us and against other teams, that when they move out of defence into attack, it's far more considered. They spread across the middle and then they use the ball going into the forward line probably better than any other team, I reckon. And so they still are playing a unique style of football because there's not any other team that's doing it that way, according to those possession maps anyway.
What was your impression, Peter?
Probably a little bit difficult in the sense that being at the game, it was one of those incredibly, as you would have seen on TV, high-pressure, exciting games. And so you're very much following the ball. And whilst I can be fairly animated during a close game, when it gets to the last sort of couple of minutes and it's close like that, I tend to shut down and put my head in my hands and just look at the floor and just hope that the time passes and we just walk away with a result. So it was a pretty stressful sort of, as a spectator, it was a highly stressful game to sit through.
Just watch your mic cord there, Pete. Sorry, mate. Just watch your mic cord. It's just rubbing on something there.
Sorry. And so, yeah, highly stressful game to sort of to sit through and to actually make any sense of. But it was just one of those. They just seemed to be out of. I think Phoenix, you're right. They seem to get very, very clean possession through the middle, and once they do, set up in that way, they're very, very hard to defend against. And they look really to score against us at will on a few occasions. So they were very difficult. From our perspective, I think I've been sort of having a little bit of a tantrum today about Brodie Smith's turnover, and I've probably made a lot of that, and I'll have to go back and try and explain myself a bit. But I could just sense at the ground that when that happened, and I was in the AFL members, and so the ball was transferred out my way, and you could just see the game open up for Hawthorn. I just had a sense at that time that it was just a huge moment in the game, and I could sense with the crowd, and that the lift that they got from the crowd, and they got that goal, and I was just with the atmosphere at the game I was just desperately worried at that point, because I thought that we're gone here, because you could just sense that Hawthorn were really, really, up for it and had been given some momentum, and then when they got the double goal, with Rioli very, very quickly, I gave us very little hope at that point, because it's like at Adelaide Oval when you come back and the crowd's behind you and you're jumping. That was just why I just felt that at 15 points up, with a few minutes to play, the crowd was just about out of the game, and if we could just, if Brodie could have just either possessed or done something, preferably kick a goal, because I don't know if it was on TV, you could see it on TV, but if that ball gets to Seedsman, Betts is in the square by himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he kicked it. I think watching it on telly, the impression I had was that he was trying to get at Seedsman just that little bit ahead of the Hawthorn player, so he could do that break. He just kicked it too far. I think, a little too excited.
He kicked it behind him, Nick. It was an utter shank, and it was a choke. And I agree with what you've written on the forums today, Pete, about Smithers. He's a 100-game player now, and that ball needed to be put, if anywhere, it needed to be put anywhere out in front and goal side of Seedsman. If that ball goes anywhere else but where it went, we probably score and win the game.
Oh, we do, because as I said, I don't know if it's if it was on TV, but Betts was out the back like he was in that last 30 seconds against Sydney.
Yeah.
So Seedsman has the Tex Walker kick. All he's got to do is just, because the Hawthorn players have come up, and so all he's got is the kick over to Betts in the goal square, and so it's 21. It's 21 points ahead with 3.5 to go. Exactly,
game over. Crowd's out of it. I agree with you, Pete.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm agreeing with you there, Phoenix. But what Brodie was trying to do was exactly as you said, but he kicked it too far in. So, yes, he really did stuff it up, but he was, which we know he can be a lot better than that. So I don't know whether it was that pressure of the occasion that got to him, but yeah, we don't want to see that again, particularly in a final.
Yes, look, I'll go back and post later on this evening. But yes, look, everyone makes mistakes, and there's lots of other instances in the game. And of course, once we lose possession at that point, of course, then there are other mistakes that we can isolate, particularly the ruck throw in at the end and things like that.
Yeah.
But none of that happens. If none of that happens,
if he hadn't made that hit,
I feel sure that as good as Hawthorn are, at 21 points down with 3.5 to go, they're done.
Yeah, I agree.
They're toast.
The thing that I'm interested in, and I don't know whether we'd ever find out, but I wonder whether Pikey made Brodie accountable for that error, because in all honesty, he should have been made to feel it. I know in Pike's press conference he was quite philosophical and fair enough, that's what you feed to the media. But I do hope that behind closed doors, whether it be on a one-on-one or whatever, he made Brodie accountable, because that was a key moment where experienced players, and Brodie is an experienced player now, experienced players just can't make those errors. He wasn't under a lot of pressure. I mean, the pressure of the occasion, yes, but he wasn't. Yeah. He had 5 metres on his opponent, and he does have a habit of hooking his kicks under pressure, and he even hooks his kicks when he has a long shot for goal. But he had 10 metres between the seed and the boundary line, and 50 metres over the back of Seedsman. He only had to hit that area. So I hope it'll be interesting if we ever know whether Pikey actually makes Brodie accountable for that and how Brodie responds.
But I think that look, just I guess if you want a sort of a main report, I guess, from what it was like at the ground, and I think the reason why I've emphasised that today is because, and I invite anybody else to post that was at the ground as well, because it was a moment that turned the crowd, and it was a moment that turned Hawthorn. And so anyway, we move on from that. But other than that, look, again, another terrific night of the football. 46,000, I think it was.
Should have been more.
I was a bit disappointed. I thought that there might have been a few more, but 46 was the number. It was good for me because we had to try and get seats. But it was a terrific effort by our guys. I mean, I thought we played really well all night, and very, very disappointing, of course, to lose. And so, but it is what it is. And so I still think that we win 2 out of our next 3, and we get this killer 8 games out of the way, and we're 5-3. We've got 5 of our last 7 games at home. I think we're really, really well set up if we can just get 2 of the next 3.
One thing that I'm interested to know, Pete, and Nicky and I talked about this on Sunday night, is whether any, and I know you said that you shut down with a couple of minutes left and put your head in your hands and all the rest of it, but we were talking about the lack of leadership at that last kick-out after Gunston's point. Was it noticeable on the ground that there was any attempt to organise to get a hit-up kick from that kick-out? Because it certainly wasn't evident on the TV.
No, I've been at match those from
Hang on, something happens.
I couldn't have been further away.
We missed all of that, Pete.
Yeah, start
Sorry,
again.
you got me now?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say I was at the AFL members, so I was at the complete opposite end of where that was happening, so I couldn't have been in a worse position to actually see. So really all I was doing at that point was looking at the TV monitor, and all I got was what you guys were getting.
Yeah.
But I was so far away, so no, I could barely see it, so I couldn't comment on that.
Yeah.
And incidentally, the person doing the kick out was Smith.
Yeah, well, he was involved in three plays: the turnover, the tackle on Poppy, and the kick out.
On that one, Poppy was actually interviewed the next day afterwards.
Didn't realise he had a free kick.
Yeah, and he also said there was no pressure on his back. And I watched it at the time, and I thought, yeah, Smith is actually hovering over the top, and he's actually more sideways.
He fell to the side.
Yeah. So it wasn't a free kick, but oh well, happened.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that the umpire interview thing they did today focused on the Isaac Smith dropped mark, but I personally thought it was that push in the back decision that was the really poor decision.
Yeah. Phoenix, just on about whether Pike has, made Brodie accountable. I did watch the replay again of the very end. Is that we know how Pike is very calm in the box, and when the siren goes, he whacks his hands down on the desk. There's this moment of frustration. He knows that game has just been let slip.
Oh yeah. But it's what happens after that's interesting. Yeah.
So I think I've always had the impression that if he needs to, he can be very strong, but he hasn't needed to yet.
I mean, I guess
not publicly.
No, that's right.
No, not publicly.
And you wouldn't expect him to do it publicly, and that's why I said we'll probably never know. But it goes towards some of the discussion that's been had on the boards since that game, regarding accepting honourable losses. And I think probably that Hawthorn game could have very easily been a moment for Pikey to say, well, look, you've probably done this in the past, but you've got to, this is a line in the sand moment. You can't continue to do that against top teams in big moments. And yes, we've won close games. I appreciate that. And I don't subscribe to the fact that we accept mediocrity as a club. However, as a team who's developing and as a team who wants to contend, I think a lot needs to be made of the fact that we had the reigning premiers beaten on their own deck, and regardless of the umpiring, we let it slip through our own mistakes. And I do hope that it is a bit of a line in the sand moment for our team and our club.
Yeah, a few people seem to have starting to throw the baby out of the pram at the moment. We lose these close games all the time. Okay, fine. We have in the past, but this is a new coach. I want to see, and I'm going to withhold my judgment, I want to see how they respond. And I want to see how they respond when they get to a certain little section or a game very similar to this again. Do they make the same mistakes?
Guys, I'm just going to jump in. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to jump in. I've got to go. Some domestic duties are calling, so I've got
clean the car.
I've got a half a car all sitting all across the lounge room at the moment, so better go. Terrific to talk to you, and sorry to only be able to jump in and out, but we'll catch you next week in full.
No, that's all right, mate. Thanks for being boundary rider for us. It was good insight.
Cheers, mate.
See you, Pete.
So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the club responds over the next few weeks. Obviously, the proof will be in the next time we come up against a Hawthorn or a Sydney away or, a West Coast at Subi or something like that and find ourselves in a similar position. But,
Big fella, you made a really good point. It's been something that I've been framing in my mind over the last couple of days while I've been stewing over the result. He's just said, you need to lose games like that before you win them, just like finals. My personal feeling, and I've not read the board because I hate reading the board after a loss,
Yeah.
is that it's the kind of result that can make a team.
Yep.
And I know that's
Yeah.
what you guys have been talking about, but it's just if we'd won that game, we would have all been congratulating ourselves. Yeah, we're on the way. This is fantastic. But losing it look, it's either, again, what Big Fella's just said on the chat, it's either going to break us or it will make us. And I just, until we see what happens now, we won't know. But I just hope like hell that this is our make and not our break.
Yeah, and interesting, in terms of our list demographic or profile, the stars have aligned in terms of that kind of game because we're so young, we're inexperienced, we're carrying a lot of inexperience, new game plan, new coach, blah, 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 blah. So there, did you scratch yourself?
That was for Vadi Magic.
He wanted somebody to rustle their microphone for a bit, so it felt like Pete was still here.
Yeah, we're gonna have to make Pete put some money in the swear jar for that. But yeah, I agree with you, Daniels, and I think we are a young team, and that kind of win or loss could be the making of us, and we're placed correctly to learn from that and to grow from that. There's plenty of upside in our group. It's not like we're North Melbourne at the end of our rope.
For me, if we had won that game, thinking back on it now, I actually think that might have been a step backwards because we had so many poor performances. The fact that we got so close to them, having those poor performances, to me says that we're on the right track in a way. But if we had won it, I think that might have, as you said, we would have patted ourselves in the back. It would have glossed over those cracks again.
That said, you want to win the game.
Yeah,
if you got the opportunity to win it, you want to win the game.
Yeah, you do want to win it.
All this retrospective philosophical stuff is great, but at the end of the day, we needed to win the game.
I like the fact that they just look so hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the players had their entire heart, mind, and soul in that.
Yeah. And interesting, to see how Brodie Smith bounces back. Rory Laird, who had an absolute shocker.
Stinker!
Never seen him play like that. Those blokes, even, Josh Jenkins was quiet. Interesting to see how those blokes bounce back.
Oh, and don't tell the board that David McKay plays his 150th game this weekend. Shh!
Congrats, Dave.
Yeah.
Well done, D-Mac.
It's a good effort. It's been a struggle for him over the last couple of years, and despite what people say, he's playing, quite well. He played quite well.
He's having a good year.
Yeah, played quite well against them again on Friday night.
I would almost go as far to say as far as saying that he's possibly having on par a year as 2009.
Yeah, and that was a good year.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he'd be gaining confidence from that. He'd be gaining confidence from the faith that's been shown in him because, they discarded VB pretty quick. So, clearly there were a few on notice. So hopefully he continues to build and with our game plan, we need that outside run. That outside run and carry is vital to our success. So having McKay up and running along with Smith and Seedsman and, maybe later on Riley Knight or someone when he breaks into the team, that all goes well. So good on him.
Treeman, are you talking about the Ackermanis article?
Yeah, we had a message there whether we've read the article yet. It's like, yes, we've mentioned it earlier.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, so we've hit the hour mark, so let's leave that game behind us where it deserves to be and have a quick look forward to Freo. First of all, do you see any selection changes?
Yeah, Brouch and Miller are apparently both fit. So,
Well, they're being tested tomorrow.
Now, the advertiser got it wrong, didn't they? They said that Crouch played in the SANFL, but he didn't, did he?
No, he didn't.
No, I forget who it was that
Maybe
covered
if they sent a journalist along.
Yeah, well, they were covering Adelaide's injury position, and they said, Crouch eased his way back in the SANFL. Well, he bloody didn't. So I could only see, I don't know whether they'd risk Miller, to be honest. Quads can be a bit annoying like that.
I can't see him coming back in either. He's not a 100-game automatic selection player.
No.
Yet.
No, and structurally we're pretty good, and Lyons is doing his job. So
yeah,
and Charlie came in, did okay.
It makes you wonder where Brouch would fit in if he is recalled.
Well, you would expect that Lyons would be the obvious choice. The interesting,
but he hasn't been bad.
No, not at all. It certainly wouldn't be on form. And you wonder whether because Lyons has got a bit of goal sense about him, and it makes you wonder whether they might just try and extend the rotation, through midfield and up forward, and just stretch a little bit more.
Well, it's certainly a good selection problem to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Riley Knight's still on the wings. In the wings, Nicky said he was just okay in the sample, but he's probably
for him.
Yeah. Menzel can't be too far away from pushing selection.
Oh, he got concussion on the weekend, didn't he?
Yeah. Okay. I think it was friendly fire as part of the contest. But interestingly enough, that he then pushed up in the midfield and still actually had some really nice touches. And considering they then looked at him at quarter time and went, probably not a good idea for you to keep continue on. On that note, as I said on Sunday night, that I thought that Andy Otten would be referred to for his contact on the umpire. Yes, he has. Interestingly, that Tim Sumner, who's the one who hit him, was also referred directly to the tribunal. Now, I think it would be interesting into what order they actually hear these cases. If they go Sumner first for the hit, because the club has said that Andy was concussed from that, and they did take him off the ground shortly afterwards because he was showing signs of concussion. Now, you can't push an umpire in the back, you can't touch them, but at the time when I saw it, I thought he had no idea that was the umpire. He just wanted to get to Sumner. And I thought the trainers needed to actually go back and probably get him off because the way he'd been lying on the ground was slightly scary. So it'll be interesting to see what evidence the club provides regarding his state at the time that it happened and whether that will be taken into account, which I think it should be. Now, he might get a couple of weeks for it because you cannot touch an umpire, but I think there are very much extenuating circumstances to his advantage in a way.
Well, I reckon we'll go in unchanged. I don't reckon they'll bring Crouch back in for Freo. I think they'll give him an extra week. I don't think they'll bring Miller back in, and I reckon they'll throw it down to the team that played Hawthorn and say, all right, go and make amends. So I doubt whether we'll see a change. The only interesting point was some suggestion that we might upgrade Riley O'Brien and give Sauce a rest, given no Sandlands. But I can't see that happening.
Me neither. So Jacobs, he loves that continuity, and I think that's how he thrives. So to give people going, he needs a rest. So I actually think that's possibly detrimental to him.
Depends if he's carrying
in a way.
Something.
Yeah, if he is, then they might do it. But Rob's timing was just shocking on the weekend. That was one of the worst games I've seen him play.
What do you reckon, Dan? Unchanged?
unless they try and find a spot for Brouch, I can't see any reason why we would change that lineup.
Yeah.
I think with a hamstring, you put him back through the SNFL. You don't bring him into the AFL.
Oh, I don't necessarily agree with that. I reckon they might rest him again. Kid gloves. If you're going to play him, you may as well play him in the ones. I don't think there's anything to be served playing him in the twos. I think they might make him sit out for another week.
Mind you, the twos are down at South Adelaide, and that's bloody cold.
Yeah, no unforced changes for mine. Freo, obviously, decimated by injury. It'll be very interesting to see what sort of attitude they bring to the game. I expect them to come out and try and win, obviously, but I don't expect them to stay in the contest for too long once we get on top.
I think it'll probably be them trying to be as dour as possible for the first half, and then it'll open up in the second half. I think we'll probably win by anywhere between 10 and 15 goals.
Ooh, big call. Nick, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think for me, anything less than probably the 10 goals. Depending on that weather, as to whether it does rain or not, that might affect it a little bit on the Friday, because I think the showers aren't coming till like late afternoon, evening. So, but that does make it a little bit slippery.
Yeah.
But I think we need to come out and make a statement. And those players, I want to see us go in unchanged. I want to see Pikey back them in, and I want to see those players actually make the effort to improve on last week's performance.
Well, this year with the flat competition, percentage is going to be really important, and I think you've got to take games like these and play 4 quarters of solid football and maximise your percentage. So it will be disappointing if we just coast in. Already taking the foot off the pedal against Port and Richmond might come back to bite us. I'd hate to see us cruise to a 6-goal win against Freo. Weather permitting, I reckon about 10.
And we need percentage. We're sitting outside the 8 currently on percentage.
Yeah, on percentage, exactly. So we need to maximise our points for this week. All right, guys. Well, 67, 68 minutes. That's probably long enough for us to prattle on. It's been nice having you back, Dan Oz.
Yay!
Hopefully not too much of a break again before you're back on a regular spot, because God knows people are sick of listening to me and Nicky.
Yeah. All right. Next week I won't be around, but after, the week after that I should be back in.
Very good.
Back in Adelaide.
Yay!
And Nicky, people are going to start talking about us. We keep bobbing up at the same time, so I'd just like to publicly declare that it's just casual between us, isn't it? Just casual.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just a bit on the side.
Yeah. Oh,
Bit of mayo.
Oh, there you go.
Coleslaw.
There we go.
What did I say on the board today? Hooker
like coleslaw.
gives that up to Cox, and then there's a bit of side bottom. I don't know.
Yeah.
On that note,
and Dennis with the centimetre perfect.
Exactly.
Oh, it's special.
See, I remembered.
I'm calling it. Good night, guys.
See ya.
No.